Welcome to Chapter 13, Physical and Cognitive Development in Middle Adulthood. So we will be looking at the time period of the 40s and 50s, and in this chapter, we will cover the following main topics: the nature of middle adulthood, physical development, cognitive development, careers, work, and leisure, and finally, religion, spirituality, and meaning in life. So let's begin with the nature of middle adulthood, and we will look at how midlife has been changing and how do we define middle adulthood. So midlife certainly has been changing. Um, it seems that middle age is starting later and lasting longer than it did in the early 1900s. People today have healthier lifestyles than people in the early 1900s. And so we stay healthier longer. Midlife seems to occur later, seems to last longer before we really feel old. So a current saying is 60 is the new 40. And this really kind of, sums up the changing midlife. Is it certainly, uh, if you go back to the early 1900s, you started to feel old, sometime after your 40th birthday. People certainly were feeling old by the time they reached 50 because the lifespan was much shorter and we were less healthy. Now you don't start feeling old until well after 60 in most cases, and so we certainly have extended and our midlife period of in a sense. Um, an increasing percentage of the population is made up of middle-aged and older adults, and so we have a rectangularization of the age distribution. Um, Throughout all of past history, you could look at the age distribution of a population, and it would basically make a triangle figure because most people would be young, and so you would have a large base of people during childhood and adolescence, and as we get older, you have less and less people, so you reach the peak of the triangle. So as age increases, there are less and less people in the population. This was the past model. The current model, the rectangularization, you can think of a rectangle, like even as you go up, in age, childhood is at the bottom once again, but you go up to adolescence, young adulthood, middle, late adulthood, and the numbers aren't decreasing. You have just as many older adults as you do children, in the current society. So we we have this whole new configuration with more and more middle-aged and older adults, and it's really affecting society and um, you know the economics of society. We have a lot more people that need cared for, and less people contributing to society when they reach older adulthood. Um, and more healthcare causes with an older population. So it certainly is changing society as a whole, and basically and especially the economics of it. Okay, defining middle adulthood. Once again, it's our 40s and our 50s. Um, During middle adulthood, we can expect declining physical skills and increased responsibility. Um, there's increased responsibility certainly because often in your middle adulthood years you end up in that sandwich generate as being the sandwich generation. Excuse me, I can't talk right now. And meaning that you're sandwiched between caring for still caring for young children or adolescents, and also you'll tend to have parents that are aging and may need caring for as well. So the responsibilities of middle adulthood are caring for the old and the young at the same time. We gain an awareness of what's called the young-old polarity during middle adulthood. This is just an awareness of the declining time that you have left in life. You're no longer young, and you know, you may not feel old yet, but you certainly, you know, are not just comfortably feeling young anymore. Uh, we become concerned with transmitting something meaningful to the next generation. This is known as generativity. This comes from Erickson's um, stages of the lifespan. His seventh stage is generativity versus stagnation. We will go over this more in the next chapter. Generation. So generativity means, you know, giving something back to the next generation. And during middle adulthood is when you usually reach and maintain career satisfaction. It is the most productive career time for most people. There are gains and losses during middle adulthood years, particularly in the losses particularly start to add up though in what we call late midlife. So late midlife is a 55 to 65 year range when you're, you know, kind of reaching the transitional stage from middle adulthood to older adulthood. And during these years, you know, an average person may experience some of these factors here: the death of a parent, the last child leaving the parental home, so, you know, creating the empty nest. Becoming a grandparent is common around these ages, preparation for or actual retirement. So there is, you know, in a lot of these may be seen as some of these things at least may be seen as some losses that occur, particularly the loss of, you know, children from home, or the loss of parents due to death. Okay, and that's enough of that. Physical development has the following topics. Physical changes we'll look at. There's one section you can read on your own about health, disease, stress, and control. We will look at mortality rates and sexuality in this section. Let's begin with physical changes. There are many visible signs of change in middle adulthood. You can go through this list yourself here. I'll just read it quick. You know, your skin obviously wrinkles and sags more. Age spots appear. The hair tends to get thinner and grayer. Nails thicken, become more brittle. The teeth yellow. Well, these are all very common physical signs. Height and weight changes are also visible signs of aging. Individuals lose both height. They lose height and they gain weight, typically during the middle adult years. The loss in height is due to bone loss in the vertebrae. One study showed that men lose approximately a half an inch on average between the years of 30 to 50. So 30 to 50, about half an inch you lose as a male. From 50 to 70, about 3/4 of an inch in height is lost for males. Women lose as much as 2 inches between the years of 25 and 75. So over that 50-year span, you know, up to about 2 inches may be lost in the woman's height. So both men and women lose height due to bone loss in the vertebrae. Being overweight is a critical health problem in our country here. A recent U.S. survey said that approximately 40% of those between 40 and 59 years of age, so the 40s and 50s, were classified as being obese. 40% in the U.S. Okay. Strength, joints, and bones. First of all, sarcopenia is age-related loss of muscle mass and strength. We reach our maximum physical strength typically in our 20s, and so sarcopenia really does start as early as the 30s, but it accelerates as we get older. Um, the cushions for bone movement become less efficient, so this results in stiffness in the joints. Um, this is this once again, this really does start in your 30s, but it accelerates as we get older. The peak functioning of joints usually occurs in the 20s, just like the peak physical strength is also in the 20s. So, I mean, the declines, really start in the 30s, but they're not really noticeable until middle age. Muscle loss occurs at a rate of 1 to 2% per year past the age of 50. It especially occurs in the back and in the legs. And this is one of the reasons that we hear complaints about those areas in older age is because of the muscle loss occurring there. One of the risks of, just to go back to sarcopenia, one of the risks certainly is obesity. It tends to speed up the process of loss of muscle mass and strength. Finally, progressive bone loss. Your maximum bone density occurs by the mid to late 30s or so. Then bone loss, will begin in the 40s. But once again, not really noticeable at first, but it accelerates when you get to your 50s. Women lose bone mass twice as quickly as men do. And by the end of midlife, you can expect that bones will break more easily and they will heal more slowly. Vision and hearing, we certainly expect declines in both of these during middle adulthood. They're perfectly normal, and everyone will experience them. Accommodation of the eye goes on where the ability to focus, accommodation of the eye refers to the ability to focus and maintain an image on the retina. It experiences declines in the 40s and 50s. We have more difficulty viewing close objects in middle adulthood. I can certainly attest to that as I look at my notes now right now. Reduced blood supply decreases our visual field, so you may get some loss in your peripheral vision. Hearing starts to decline by 40s, and typically high-pitched sounds are lost first. Once again, I can also attest to that because I have more trouble hearing females in my classes compared to males because of the loss of higher pitched sounds. Mortality rates. Chronic diseases are the main cause of death during middle adulthood. A chronic disease means it's a disease with slow onset and long duration. So it's the damage is done over a long period of time. If we go back to the first half of the 20th century, infectious disease used to be the main cause of death. As infectious disease was controlled more with things like immunizations, the number of deaths due to disease declined, at least due to infection declined, and chronic disorders increased. Chronic disorders are linked to chronic stressors and contribute to chronic disorders. The two major chronic disorders are heart disease and cancer, with cancer being the number one killer during middle and late adulthood, and heart disease being number two. Men have higher mortality rates for all leading causes of death compared to women. And finally, sexuality. The term climacteric refers to a midlife transition in which your fertility declines Um, this occurs for both men and for women, but it is certainly more pronounced for women among humans. We refer to menopause as the climacteric for women. It's the cessation, the ceasing of her menstrual periods. Once they cease, that means she is no longer able to reproduce. This typically occurs during late 40s or early 50s, with the average age being 51. Some of the symptoms are hot flashes, nausea, fatigue, and rapid heartbeat. And there's certainly a noticeable decrease in estrogen levels, um, which is one of the things leading to some of these symptoms. Hormone replacement therapy is common for women that have gone through menopause. It will help with some of the symptoms. When I say it's common, it is common for more, I guess, for more serious cases, where the symptoms may in some cases be severe. This is one of the treatments, and it basically is replacing some of the loss of hormone production that occurs in the ovaries. Okay. There are also hormonal changes in middle-aged men. It's not as pronounced as menopause is for women, where you reach a certain status of losing your reproductive ability. I mean, that doesn't happen for males. Males can continue to be reproductive into very late in life and until their deaths, really. But there is because of hormonal changes, there is a noticeable decline in sexual activity and sexual interest that goes on with many males in middle age. One of the signs is erectile dysfunction, which is an inability to achieve and maintain an erection. This happens with about 50% of men between the ages of 40 to 70. So about half the men will experience it at some point during that time period. The main treatment for erectile dysfunction is Viagra and similar drugs, such as Levitra is another one, or Cialis is another one. And that concludes the first half of chapter 13.